Hey, it's Sunday, the 2nd of October, 2022, and welcome to the Crypto Club, where we talk about crypto, blockchain, DLT, NFTs, ICOs, STOs, all sorts of letters, but we do it in a way that it actually means something. If you're a novice or if you're an expert, you'll know what I'm talking about all about. We hold these sessions every Sunday evening. They're open to everybody. So if you're a beginner and you have some basic questions or you'd like to learn some more, do come along. If you're an experienced person or you're working on a project in some way that you'd like to talk about, then come and join us and share details as well. If you don't know much about things like blockchains or CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, we're going to be talking about them this week. So stick around to hear a little bit about what's going on around the world with those. So with that, let's see who's going to come and join us today. So we've got a mixture of new and old faces here today. Hello to all.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So Alina's been on these sessions a number of times. She knows how they kind of work in that, and she's been an absolute rock star in asking some great questions, that kind of thing. She claims to be a novice. She claims to be a novice, but she asks some really good questions as well. So I don't know about you guys. Maybe Gaz, if you want to give a quick start, what brings you along today?
I'm just learning, basically. I've not been into crypto that long. I got into stocks first and then gradually got into crypto, and then I've just been learning since then. So I was just here to learn, basically. Excellent.
That's good. And Thomas, yourself?
Oh, yeah, we had a brief exchange earlier in the week just about a client of ours that's trying to embark on a blockchain journey. So yeah, just interested to learn a bit more and see what the sort of, I guess, baseline is for beginning that journey.
Okay, fantastic. Well, a quick bit about my background then. So I've actually been involved in blockchain for about 6 or so years now. I actually stayed away from crypto for a while. I'm focused on blockchain and benefits of that, particularly in the insurance sector, which is a really interesting area. I kind of eventually got dragged into crypto with all of these cryptocurrencies appearing all over the place. And it's a kind of a necessary evil these days. So I've been running this crypto group for, must be about 4 years or something now. Originally it was in person. So we actually used to meet up in a coffee shop in a local town. Then COVID kicked in and we went online, and we've never looked back. So it's great. Completely variable. Some weeks it might be just a couple of us chatting. Other weeks it might be 8, 10, 12 people. We get complete novices who come along who are asking really great basic questions, because they're usually the best questions as well, that you don't even think about thinking of. And then we get people who sometimes they may be running a project or something, and they just want to talk a little bit. So you may have seen that I record these sessions and put them on YouTube for people to watch, and it's amazing. I've had it on one of the few occasions I've been into London. I've actually had people at a conference come up to me and say, "Oh yeah, I watch your videos." And I never come on to join on the program, but I do watch the videos, so at least I know. So for anyone really, quick question straight away: do any of you have any questions that you've come along with tonight that you'd like answered? Let's deal with those first.
No, not really. I haven't.
Otherwise we'll start with Thomas. Where'd you start?
I think I have a question.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I'm going to articulate it particularly well. But I'll have a go. When you're thinking about building a kind of a blockchain infrastructure to do stuff, we're thinking, you obviously need some sort of blockchain as a service. You've got to make some decisions around public, private, or the hybrid. I forget there's a technical term for it. But once you've kind of established that infrastructure, that baseline, do you then kind of do you automatically start with a distributed ledger? Is that the kind of the building block of any application that you're going to put, be it crypto, be it insurance products or whatever?
So the actual starting point is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? You actually start there. You don't even look at how the technology is going to hang together.
Okay.
So you kind of take a step back. You've got the old saying that if you know how to use a hammer, everything's a nail. And I used to get invited to be a blockchain consultant for any number of projects, and about 95% of them would turn out where it be. I'd go along for a cup of coffee, and someone would say, "Oh, we're really excited. We want to run this blockchain project. We'd like you to come on board and run it." Blah blah blah. By the end of the cup of coffee, 95% of the times, that's 19 times out of 20, I would have proved to them that blockchain was the wrong answer, which as a blockchain consultant is not really good for my revenue, because I've basically talked myself out of a job an awful lot of times. So it actually comes back to what problem you're trying to solve, first of all. Then, could a blockchain be the right answer? And if so, why? So it comes back to the old, if you can do it in a database, why don't you use a database? So when you look at kind of like, what are the unique features of a blockchain? Immutability, the ability to guarantee that something can't be rewritten, pretty much. You can actually do that with a database. Decentralized system, you can conceptually do decentralized SQL Server databases. Smart contracts, programmability. Well, any database developer will tell you they know stored procedures, which is kind of pretty similar to what one of those are. So if you look at the features individually, you'll quickly talk yourself out of using a blockchain. Now, if you flip it and you say, right, the problem we're trying to solve is we're working with a number of organizations who are different organizations, and we've got a problem with us all using the same version of the data at the same time and having transparency and being able to trust each other that we've got the right data. Now you can say, right, so blockchain can fit with this. As you say, a distributed ledger, might be the good foundation on that straight away. Okay, so now we know we could use a distributed ledger to share our information, and we might secure that through a blockchain protocol. What else does it offer? So you kind of build it from there, really. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a really good answer. I guess the use case here is, well, they're a bank. They're a reasonably mid-tier commercial and financial bank, and their use cases, well, look, everyone's doing it, so we better jump on the bandwagon, or we're going to get left behind. And we're doing some academic research for them onto, well, yeah, probably why would you do it? What would you get out of it? So that's a really good way of looking at it and flipping it on its head.
Yeah. The other thing to remember as well is that it's funny. It's Richard, I've forgotten his surname now, who used to work for a bank, and he and I used to bump into each other on the crypto and blockchain circuits when we were speaking that. He came up with a phrase years ago when he was working for a bank, which is you can only have so much fun with a blockchain on your own. And what we mean by that is that if your solution is purely a blockchain application within your organization, there's no need to do it. You do need multi-party type thing. So you look at what Barclays, HSBC, Credit Suisse,
JP Morgan.
all of them have done projects that involve intercompany activity. So JP Morgan with JPM Coin, which is their own crypto, that is an intercompany settlement system where it requires multiple parties to be doing that. If you take a look at the major blockchain-like protocol that's being used in the banking sector is Corda, which is R3's product. And again, R3 have got a consortium of banks who are looking at doing the whole interoperability piece. And then if you look at things like ISDAs, so, the derivatives market, so the ISDA, which is the international standard on derivatives. So, you might have heard of things like futures, swaps, options, all that kind of thing. So ISDA we're doing some stuff around blockchain and crypto as well. Because ultimately, an ISDA contract, so a futures contract or an options contract, is simply a series of if this, then this, if this, then this type thing, just like an insurance contract. But it only works if you're doing it with other organizations. So probably an extended answer to the simple figure out what your problem is first. But you're right, a lot of companies were and are trying to run blockchain projects because they're blockchain projects. And I found I've managed to get into a number of organizations, not by saying, hello, I'd like you to re-engineer your business processes, which actually is what you are trying to do, but by instead saying, hello, I'd like to help you look at blockchain and distributed ledger technology. And they go, oh, that sounds fascinating. What does that involve? Well, it involves us looking at your business processes and re-engineering them. Oh, okay. Whereas if I come in straight up and say, I want to take a look at your processes and look at re-engineering them, they'll say, oh, we did BPM and we did BPR and we did all these things years ago. That's old stuff. But as soon as you say the nice new shiny phrase, you know, it was artificial intelligence a couple of years ago. You know, if you said, oh, I've got an AI project, you know, that would get you through the door and get you going type thing. So that all makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you, Gary. That's really helpful.
And as I always say, you can always reach out to me separately and we can have a chat.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll probably end up having another cup of coffee, but it'll be a virtual cup of coffee where I'll probably save you and the company a lot of money. So Gaz, you say you kind of at the beginning, you're kind of a novice.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So well, one day I was totally different thing. I always get nervous when people say kind of, because I used to do a lot of gliding, so you know, airplanes without engines type thing. And I took a guy up one day, it was an American guy, and I said to him, did he have any flying experience? He said, a little bit, kind of, yeah. And by the time we'd had a chat, he was actually a test pilot out of Nellis.
Oh no.
So I'm always nervous when people say,
no,
kind of.
It were, I think 2020, middle of 2020, and I watched to all time high, and then it's obviously come to where it is at minute. But I were into stocks mainly, but I've always had that thing of it were a scam, and until I got into the Bitcoin and I seen what it were actually about, and then I went down that rabbit hole, and then that were it. Kind of a little bit obsessed, if I'm honest.
Obsession's great because you want to learn about these things. And what I discovered is that the more I learned about crypto, the more I realized how little I understood about real world financial systems.
Yeah.
You know, so there are some things that overlap. So you look at, if you're stock trading and you're using trading charts, and you're using candlesticks, the concept's exactly the same. You know, whether it's a commodity or a share or Bitcoin, a candlestick's a candlestick. It's all the same. The big difference is realizing why things like technical analysis work in crypto, because it's not the same reason as to why it works in the traditional stock market world. And the difference, because I can see Elena's going, oh, what's crypto? And the difference is simply that in crypto, you're using technical analysis purely to figure out what everyone else in the market is thinking. That's it. So you're actually using technical analysis to analyze the thinking of people in the market, as opposed to in share trading, where there are fundamentals behind it. So there's actually a business with customers and products and profits and people in that. Whereas with crypto, you're just looking at charts and trends because everyone else is. And therefore, you know that if they've all spotted a signal, that means, you know, buy now, because you've got a golden cross between the 200-day moving average and the 20 or something. Everyone knows that's a sign of something. And so if you think, well, everyone else knows that, then the market will behave that way. But how have you found it so far? Do you actively trade, or you just read?
No, I just tend to buy and I stake certain things and that, and Cardano, I stake that. So it's basically learning about all these kind of things. But I keep mine on my own ledger, like a nano. I don't keep them anywhere else. I learned all that pretty early on, and I just save all mine, and then it's basically just in my own.
So if you're doing stuff like yield farming, and if you've got your own ledger, you're actually already well beyond the basic novice type level.
Yeah, probably, but it's still pretty new.
Yeah. And have you appeared in Top Gun as a fighter pilot?
Oh no. I wish.
For Marina. Alina, you've been quiet this evening. How's it going? Any questions or anything?
No, yeah, everything is great. Yeah, everything's great. I do have one question, and this is a question that I walked away after our session last week.
Okay.
So last week, one of the participants was telling us how she buys Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies every month.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why I never thought of asking this question before, but do people have several or different crypto wallets on different crypto platforms?
Mm-hmm.
But do they usually have only one? And
So,
what are the pros and contras, and why, and how is it done?
okay. So I'm about to release a survey that will be going out to my community soon, asking people about how they're using crypto wallets and how they're securing things. And it's because I'm doing some work with a crypto custodial company, and we're looking at digital estate planning. So something for all of you to think of in the future is, if you buy enough crypto and it actually ends up being a fair amount in value, have you thought about what you're going to do if you die? You know, how are you going to pass it on to other people? So I'm doing some work with a couple of companies around there, and I'm going to be sending out a questionnaire asking people about the wallets. My experience to date is that the more advanced people become, the more crypto wallets they use. And when they begin, it might be something like they register with Binance or crypto.com or blockchain.com. They'll use the wallet that comes with that initially, just to get them started. Then they'll quickly figure out, actually, I need to take control of my keys because they understand enough about private keys. This is where they go out and they get themselves a nano ledger or a Trezor or something. Then they start dabbling where they spotted this NFT and they quite like this NFT, and that means they need a MetaMask wallet to be able to trade on OpenSeas or whatever. Then they go and look at something else and someone's doing an airdrop. That means you need to download Brave and use that browser and the wallet. So before you know it, you end up with loads of wallets all over the place. Okay, so good things and bad things about that. The good thing is that if you've got several wallets, you've now diversified your risk. So if your Trezor gets hacked or lost or whatever, you've not lost everything because you've still got stuff spread around. Other things, the big drawback is it's a complete admin nightmare to try and remember all of your phrases and all of your wallets and keep it all details of it sensibly without making it central. Because one of the worst things you can do is write all the details in a Google Doc and stick it on a Google shared drive, because then when your computer gets hacked, and your computer will get hacked at some point, and you've suddenly got all your seed phrases and everything for a hacker to use. So that's something maybe, Gaz, as you mentioned, you've got a nano ledger.
Yeah.
And I know companies who use nanos. They actually go and stick them in a safe, in a vault, in an underground storage facility in Zurich with armed guards around it. But they keep a paper copy of the seed phrase that they used, and they keep that in the drawer. It's like,
well, that's pointless.
Exactly. It's like with that piece of paper, you can recreate the private key, which gives you access to everything.
Yeah.
So, and it's fascinating. We're talking people with millions of dollars doing this. So some of them just don't have a clue. So Alina, a long answer to the question about one of the risks of having multiple wallets is, well, first of all, it can be a good thing because it's spread out, and equally it's a bad thing because it's spread out. So it gives you more things to have to manage. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah.
So there's good things and bad things. I always suggest to people, once you've got more than a certain value, which becomes sufficiently important to you, then that's where you initially get a hardware wallet. And then once you get beyond the level of that, then you might have another wallet or something, and you'll typically keep things spread out across them. So it all comes down to try not to keep enough value that would affect you if you lost it in one place. So it's the whole keeping, what is it? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, is the English phrase.
Yeah, that's right. And also, once, if you only have one crypto wallet, and once you make a transaction that someone can identify you with, then they can trace all your history of your
potentially. Yeah, but potentially it depends how you do it. The actual purest way of transferring crypto is that every transaction you do involves creating a new wallet. So if you actually
disposable wallet.
Yeah, so you have your private key can actually be built from it's called a heuristic deterministic wallet. So basically you start off with the main wallet, and then it creates a new address and a new address, and new address. But you're right that ultimately, if you sent me some crypto, I know the wallet address that you use for that transaction. I could go on to, if it's Bitcoin, for example, I could go on to Bitcoin Explorer. I could find the wallet that you used. Then I could see where the funds to fill that wallet came from and track it back from there. So, you know, what you could potentially do is have multiple wallets and go through what are called mixers. And a mixer is a service. So the one that's been in the news of late was Tornado Cash. And Tornado is a thing that you put your crypto, say your 1 Bitcoin, into a Tornado Cash pool, and it spins it around and it splits it out and it spits it back out, but with different keys, so you can't trace it's coming from you, or not so easily anyway. Make sense?
Yeah, thanks. It does.
And I also often say with things like mixers now, I often have to say that I'm not offering financial, legal, or taxation advice. I'm not offering criminal advice either, or how to money launder. It's just you can do things on that. So Thomas, then maybe in terms of your journey, you're more on the blockchain side than the crypto side then?
Yeah, the client specifically said avoid any talk of cryptocurrency. So I'm actually, when I was joining this call, I saw it was crypto, but I thought I'd join anyway on the off chance that there was a bit of discussion about the infrastructure itself. So and I appreciate that. But yeah, they have said they don't want to get involved there. It's too busy.
It's a shame banks don't get involved with it, because there's a lot of people taking money out of the banking system and putting it into their own. Like I've got my money on a ledger kind of thing. Maybe if like my bank did do it, I'd have kept it with a bank. But they're losing that much money that you think that they would get into it at some point.
I guess it's maybe they don't want the angry mobs and pitchforks.
Yeah, I know.
It's actually simpler. Having spoken to some of the banks, the reason they don't want to do it is that at the moment, the total market capitalization of crypto, so how much value is the entire crypto market, is, I think it's $800 billion, which sounds like a big number, but in terms of financial services numbers, that's tiny.
Yeah.
It's almost insignificant. Now, if they handle crypto in any way, then they have to do anti-money laundering checks, sanctions checks, due diligence checks. They have to do what's known as KYC, so know your customer. But these are all things that they have to do with cash. So if you walk into a bank with a suitcase full of used dollar bills, they're obliged to ask a whole range of questions, and they've got processes and procedures around all of that. The problem is that the effort to do KYC, AML, and all this kind of stuff on crypto is an area that they're not yet fully comfortable with. And so the risk they carry is that they might end up being in breach of regulatory requirements for something that's a tiny market. So they just file it in the it's too much trouble to be interested in, which is why a lot of banks will just, if you say you trade in crypto, they will close your bank account.
Yeah.
So some of them are a bit more friendly now, but certainly business bank accounts, sorry, if they think that your company is dealing in crypto, they will seize your account. They'll freeze it. And I know someone who that they had an account with, I believe it's HSBC, about 3 years ago. It was a company account. They were a crypto company. They were a legitimate one. And the bank account was frozen for several months. And they ended up re-domiciling in Canada because they just couldn't find a UK bank to deal with them anymore. So you kind of get it. So banks are interesting because they're all dabbling with this stuff. So
Yeah.
they've all been involved in doing interbank settlements. They're all chatting with the Bank of England about what it's looking at as a central bank digital currency, which isn't a cryptocurrency, but it's similar. They're all dabbling in this space, but they don't want to actually give themselves any legal exposure to it. That's mainly why they're not touching it.
Sorry, is that the state of things in the UK or all over the world?
It's certainly the case in the UK, and I think that's reflected in a lot of other countries as well. There are some countries that are like a bit more progressive, shall we say. So Dubai at the moment, they're producing a whole load of crypto-friendly regulation. And so that they're a lot more supportive. Switzerland was for a while quite crypto-friendly and then kind of went off a little bit.
Bahrain as well.
Yeah, the whole of the UAE. So Dubai, Bahrain, that whole region has been quite supportive. Dubai is claiming to be the leader.
In what time frame do you think a central bank coin would be out?
So there already is in China.
Yeah,
they're already using the e-yuan, which I think has been rolled out to about 250 million users so far. So for them, that's still a pilot in a way.
Because if that's the only thing available, how would we be able to buy like crypto? What route would there be from that?
Yeah, so this is where I've said we need to keep an eye, because regulators accept that crypto is not regulated. So at the moment, they can't kind of control crypto. What they can do is they can control the on-ramps and the off-ramps.
Yeah.
So the FCA, for example, in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority, that did write out to all the CEOs of finance firms a few years ago with what was known as a Dear CEO letter that, in effect, just reminded them of their obligations to do all various checks and that. And as a result, a whole load of companies just took the hint and said, oh, we're not dealing in it at all. So I think some of that is changing. The FCA, so sticking to the UK for a minute, the FCA at the moment is absolutely swamped with trying to regulate the stuff it is responsible for already. And so I think crypto is just on the periphery on its list of things to deal with. So there is a crypto asset register, which has now got 38 companies or 35 companies on it who have registered to say that they are dealing in crypto in some way. So that's the likes of Gemini, the exchange. There's a few other exchanges as well. Hey, Eric, joined us.
I just woke up, and if I hadn't seen your message in the Telegram, and even then I have to do a little math to see when did you post the message and how, you know. But seriously, that the fact that you post on the Telegram channel is what gets me here.
That's good. That usually works. I spray it out to must be about 30 different groups that I either run or am involved in some way.
Wow.
Because invariably I get people who say, oh yeah, I saw your Telegram message, or I saw it in a WhatsApp group, or I saw it in Meetup or whatever. And everyone comes in from all over the place and they always say, oh yeah, I saw it on the group. And I go,
yeah, okay. Okay.
So, Eric, which country are you in at the moment?
I'm in LA in the US.
Okay, so it's still morning time for you, is it?
Yeah, I just woke up. I thought, in fact, that it was at noon, and I thought, oh, I'll catch it just in time. And then I realized, oh gosh, I'm already halfway in. But I'll join anyway.
That's good. It's good to see you again. And at least you're not likely to get affected by the hurricane that's working its way through Carolina.
Oh yeah. My brother's in Florida, and he's. I think they just kind of missed the hurricane, but they had to board up all the windows, and they were basically like a foot underwater or something.
It's not great. So geographically, we've got like Elena's in Ireland, Gaz, I guess you're in the UK, and Thomas likewise.
Yep, Nottinghamshire.
Ah, okay. It's fairly north these days then.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, well, Eric, we were just chatting a little bit about regulation, really, and the crypto markets, and also Thomas is talking more widely around the blockchain side of things, which is nice. I always say that cryptocurrency is just one of many uses of a blockchain or functions of a blockchain. So yeah. It's good. It's good to talk in the kind of the wider domain, really. That's good.
Yeah, I think the CBDC conversation is interesting from a slightly different perspective than most people take, which is that CBDCs are nominally a product of central banks, and central banks are to a large extent in trouble. Mm-hmm. And it kind of depends on whether there's two warring factions, whether one of them succeeds, right? Because the function of a central bank is nominally to manage the monetary currency for the benefit of the country, but that is an intention that has been abrogated by the membership to the BIS. So, and in fact, that's really what the whole mess in Libya was about, right? Because Gaddafi refused to have the central bank join the BIS, and eventually they just killed him. And then they joined the BIS. They had him join. And the reason is that the interests of the central bank of central banks are necessarily different from the interests of the people of any nation. The things that a central bank can do, which really are, there's only one thing they can actually do, right, which is to issue money, can be enormously beneficial to the people of the nation, as Gaddafi proved. But they can also be enormously beneficial to the BIS at the expense of the people. So I think the issue of CBDCs is a little bit orthogonal to that fight, because in fact there's a parallel fight, which is the elimination of physical cash. Mm-hmm. As long as you have physical cash, you have a problem of leakage, and you don't have control, and you don't have KYC. You can regulate its coming into financial institutions, and they've essentially deputized private business in most countries. So I can't just go out and buy a car, for example, with $80,000, right? Those guys have been made deputies of the treasury, and now have to do KYC and AML on me. It's like, oh, where did that money come from, right? So I can pay for lunch, but any sort of bigger ticket items like real estate or yachts or helicopters or stuff like that, they've closed the doors on that. Mm-hmm. But they still have a basic problem that cash flows anonymously, and therefore maintains the sovereignty of the people. So the CBDCs in some ways are a kind of a connection step. Not that they actually need it, right? Because they have already digital money. We've had digital money forever and ever, since we've had computers. And so they could just choke off the cash, the physical cash supply, and then take control. And the ultimate goal of that game is really the whole negative interest rate territory stuff, right? Because the problem is that you can inflate the currency. And yes, you do so at the expense of the population. But that's a dangerous game of diminishing returns. So what you can do instead is you can confiscate the funds of the population, of the citizens, right? And in the US, let's just say, and this is probably the case in many other nations, there are rules for how taxation happens versus confiscation. So one of the rules in the US is that there is to be no taxation without representation. There's two forms of taxes in the US, right? There's excise taxes and things that tariffs and things like that. And then there is taxation with representation. So you have something like the income tax, for example, actually isn't a tax. It's a voluntary contribution. They call it a tax because they now lie about everything, right? And the Supreme Court here has ruled many times on the issue of the 14th Amendment, right? It is not a tax. It cannot be imposed upon the citizen. So if you can't impose income tax, then what you can do is you can set the interest rates to below zero, at which point the citizen would say, well, look, if I have to pay to keep my money in the bank, I'm just going to withdraw it all in cash and put it under the mattress and not pay that tax, right? Because it's essentially a tax. And so that's why they fight against cash. If they eliminate cash, now you have no choice but to have the money in the bank because it's the only place where it can exist. And therefore, with the negative interest rate policy, they will just erode your wealth across time.
So, Eric, I was probably, sorry for cutting across there. I was just conscious in terms of time and that. I think that's really important. And that kind of comes back to Gaz's thing as well. You were asking before about CBDCs. So for anyone who's listening, CBDC, central bank digital currency, but basically a bank running the currency. There was a project in Sweden that was going to go live, I think last year now, which was the e-Corona. And that was going to be one of the first central bank issued digital currencies, but they've delayed it by at least 2 years because of some of the stuff that Eric is describing there about, you know, the censorship and the taking of the money in that they realized there was too much of a political backlash against it. There was concern. So we take a look at what happened a few months ago in Canada.
Yeah, but by the way, Sweden has already lost because they eliminated cash completely. You cannot, there is no paper anymore.
But they were actually about to launch something called the e-Corona, which was going to be the first example of this. But up in Canada a few months ago, this shows what banks can do as well. They froze the bank accounts of the Canadian truckers who were doing the process. Right. So it shows that you know, they kind of have those capabilities. So just with that, conscious Kirill's just joined us as well. I want to say hi, Kirill. Is he there? Just where I get to say it last. Kirill, you're on mute. Or is he just listening? Okay. So yeah, I find CBDCs fascinating because people tend to conflate them. They confuse them with crypto, and they are actually quite different. So in the very nature, the fact that they're called central bank digital currencies and not distributed type things, one thing, and that they are actually different in the nature. In the UK, the Bank of England is doing some work on a CBDC, and I was on one of the meetings a while ago where they said that they're exploring the features that cryptocurrency offers to look at how they could introduce that in a CBDC. And it was interesting, the same day I was in Parliament later on that day, where I actually raised the question with them of, if you've now got a programmable CBDC, so you can control when people can use their money and how they can use it, and in fact, if it even exists anymore, because you can deactivate it, what the kind of social consequences of that are. I'm thinking in China, they're already talking about the e-yuan, which we mentioned earlier, being linked to a thing called SRI, which is the Social Responsibility Index, I think it's called. So it's this whole notion that if you're a good citizen, you can access certain services, including banking and money. If you're not good, or if you associate with people who are not good, then that could affect your credit or your access to cash. So Thomas, that's another direction where banks may be looking as well as to how they can potentially plug into CBDCs. through the
So the
through the clearing.
CBDC is actually a vehicle for a different fight. It's a fight between the central banks and the commercial banks, because the thing is, if I have, and this ties into physical cash, right? If I have physical cash, I need to be able to put it in the bank. I need to have physical presence. I need to go somewhere, right? And that's the role of the commercial bank, is to be the on-ramp and off-ramp into the digital world for physical cash. If you have a CBDC coin,
Actually,
that's no longer physical.
Sorry, quickly. It's certainly in the UK that's not the case. In the UK, it's retail banks who provide access to cash. It's the commercial banks who take the loans that they get off the Bank of England to create through fractional reserving access to the loans and cash, which the retail bank can then use. So it sounds like a minor thing, but it is actually quite key that we've only got certain commercial banks who effectively create money from the central bank. And then you've got retail banks, which is the high street presence, which in the UK
Yeah,
is disappearing.
that's a question of nomenclature, right? When I said commercial banks, I mean any entity, any financial entity that is capable of providing banking services, right? Because the thing is that in order to centralize power, you have to centralize it within the nation first. And we have the situation where both on the credit side and on the retail side, there is a great deal of power. In fact, if you look at the Federal Reserve, it's really more like a federation, right? So there are 12 member banks, and then there's the issue of chartering under at the federal level in the United States by all of the thousands and thousands of banks that there are. They are all in their own right powerful, even if they agree to the same set of rules, right? But that's really not what the central planners want. In order to eliminate banking altogether and to just leave the central bank as the entity that the citizen does business with, you have to get rid of cash. You need a CBDC, right? The digital dollars that we have today are actually what dollars are, and the physical representation is how we trade. If you do away with that, you no longer need that. It leaves you in a position where the central bank can be not the lender of last resort, but the lender, right? And so that's really what that fight is about. The commercial layer of the banking system in the world isn't interested in CBDCs because they understand that that's their demise, right? And central banks kind of want it, but you know, in many cases, central banks have shareholders who are themselves banks, and therefore not interested in it.
And that's where I find it fascinating, just to extend this out, but we take a look at what happened in the last 2 years with Facebook, when Facebook was about to launch its own cryptocurrency, or it was talking about it. And
Libra.
And when it was initially Libra, even with Libra and subsequently what they replaced it with, DM, I think it was, they didn't even get to the point of creating it, and they were already getting trouble off the governments. I found it fascinating because I remember seeing the press release saying, oh, Facebook's looking at this thing. And about a week later, the commercial and retail banks kind of woke up and went, Facebook's doing what? You know, suddenly it's the world's largest bank. And then a week after that, all the central banks went, Facebook's doing what? Because they realized they could totally undermine the whole thing. That's where it's going to be interesting. Keep an eye on the likes of PayPal and Amazon in particular at the moment, who are looking at doing some interesting things. Facebook learned its lesson and rebranded their product as Meta for the parent company in that, but they also sold off the cryptocurrency idea to a Californian bank, if I remember correctly. And they've said, oh, it's just too complex, we're not going to get into it. Because I think they realized that you're treading on too many toes when you try and replace the dollar, which is what they nearly did. The other interesting one, and this comes back again, we're kind of crossing the divide of blockchain, crypto, and wherever else here, is Starbucks. So, so for those who didn't know, Starbucks, when you take a look at the loyalty points that they hold and what they're valued at, it makes them, I think it's the world's third largest bank in effect. So if you actually look at loyalty points and how you can top your card up and that. So Starbucks have just gone into a partnership agreement with, I think it's Polygon. Polygon being a proof of stake blockchain, to use it for the what's called Odyssey, which is the loyalty card system in the USA. So they've announced that they're about to put their loyalty card system onto a blockchain. So there you go, Thomas. There's another one, but bit of homework to go and check up on, because then you've suddenly got a bleed off from that about that they're already talking about using it for NFTs as well. And then you take a look at the announcement during the week by MasterCard. MasterCard have announced that they're going to provide a credit card which is NFT based, so you can actually have your NFT printed on your credit card, which is all it is, in fact. So you can see how the likes of Visa, MasterCard, all the big banks, they're all still scrabbling around to work out what they can do with this. But yeah, check out Starbucks. They announced, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that they're doing this scheme where they're going to use a blockchain-based loyalty card system for their points.
I'm going to have to drop off. I've got bedtime duties.
You should have invited them on. I saw them. We could have waited.
They have been a feature of the last 2 years at my company, so everyone knows the pair of them. But it's lovely talking to you all. Thanks ever so much, and thank you, Gary, for everything earlier on. I hope to keep in touch and speak to you all soon. Take care.
Come back again, or
thank you.
No problem.
Yeah,
Cheers then,
thanks
Thomas.
a minute. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So what else is happening in the world of crypto that's of any interest to anybody then? Anyone keeping an eye on what's happening with Ripple at the moment in courts?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. Are they any closer to reaching a decision yet?
Some people say so, but then some people say it'll run into next March, I think, in March, roughly, but I'm not too sure. No, I don't think anyone really knows.
Yeah, I still have a sneaking suspicion that at the last minute they'll reach an out of court settlement and it'll all get closed down and the problem goes away. So for those who aren't familiar, Ripple, which is Ripple Labs, who are behind the Ripple cryptocurrency, XRP, there's this whole thing about the SEC, so the Securities Exchange Commission, one of the regulators, one of the many regulators in America who's trying to take ownership of crypto in some way, was prosecuting Ripple on the basis that they believe that XRP is a security, and therefore when Ripple sold the tokens, they should have sold that as a security and been regulated and everything. And Ripple was arguing, well, actually no, because you made or your chief executive made an announcement about Ethereum, I think it was at some point, that it's a utility and it's not a security. Therefore, we took that as being that we'd be okay to trade, blah, 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 blah. And then all that's happened since is a load of lawyers have got very rich trying to work through the case. So yeah, because the interesting thing is that if that does go to court, or sorry, if it reaches finality in court, then the decision could have quite a profound impact. Because if Ripple is determined to be a e-money, then it means that a lot of cryptocurrencies will have to go down the electronic money regulation route. Whereas if it's considered to be a security, then that could affect a lot of other crypto tokens or cryptocurrencies that might also be viewed as securities. So Ethereum's the obvious one, where there's a lot of companies who are involved in doing levels of development on top of the Ethereum platform, where all of a sudden they could suddenly find that Ethereum's a security as well, and that could be a whole world of pain. So we shall see where that one goes.
I think one of the sticking points in these cases is the problems of American jurisprudence. When the process of law construction, in fact, there are standards for jurisprudence, right? When you make a rule, you should provide clarity, and the Germans understand this very well. If you ask the German government whether or not something is legal, they might take a little while to figure out what you're asking, and they'll come back with a yes or no. They're very definitive about that. In the United States, the answer is who the hell knows? Because what you'll have to do is actually go to court. The law is so badly written that I'll give you a great example. The Securities Exchange Commission was created to regulate securities. Well, what is a security? The answer is we don't know. It's not defined anywhere, right? So then it's a question of what does everyone think a security is? And, you know, do the courts agree with that, right? It's really, I think in some ways it's a common law versus imperial law type of problem. And so the SEC is going to court now with a very weak hand. They have to show that, you know, in essence, XRP meets the qualifications for a security, but they don't have a clear consensus of what a security is. They have merely examples in the past and how certain courts have ruled. And that's really a very scary position. They have to do this, right? Because, and in some ways it's kind of the sword of Damocles for them. If they don't go to court, they don't show that they have any teeth, then people are just going to move on. And if they do go to court and get ruled against, they're finished, right? Then crypto is all good. You know, in my personal perspective, I think Congress would have to create legislation around crypto, which is really what they're trying to do. But that's a politically difficult fight.
I find it interesting as well that in the USA, there's about 13 major regulators who are all staking a claim in owning crypto, whether it's SEC, CFTC, various of them. And then every state has got state regulation as well. So it's one of the most complicated regions. But the other thing that comes home as well, I described to some people a while ago, that in America, you can pretty much do anything you like as long as it's legal. Whereas
no, as long as it's small.
Okay, but you compare that to some other countries, and India is a typical one, where you can do anything providing it isn't illegal. So it's a mindset difference type of, which is where India has kind of like, it's now actually one of the biggest users of crypto in terms of volumes and that. It's got a relatively
actually, you're wrong about the US. The US is like India. You can do anything in the US as long as it isn't illegal, right? So in other words, for something to be prohibited, it has to be made explicitly illegal. Otherwise, you're free to do it, right? But in practice, the reality is that there really isn't law, because again, because of poor jurisprudence, which is actually intentional, right? The reason why legislators don't write clarity into the law is because they want the regulating agencies to have a great deal of discretion, right? It's all interpretive, and as long as it requires interpretation, now there's room for political influence. So what Facebook was doing with their coin Libra wasn't illegal, right? They didn't stop because it was clear that it would have been illegal. They stopped because of political pressure.
And I think that's often the thing as well. Having spoken to lawyers, where I've worked on some projects where we're looking at using blockchain smart contracts to replace legal contracts, and you get this whole thing of, well, you know, a contract is a very clear set of instructions. Well, actually, when you delve into it, you discover it isn't. And a lot of commercial contracts have got what lawyers tend to call wriggle room, which gives both parties the flexibility to actually do business together. And it's fascinating that you always think that the law is very, very clear. And sadly enough, I actually read Acts of Parliament sometimes. And it looks fairly clear, and then you realize actually it isn't quite as clear cut as you think it is, even if you're using things like Black's Dictionary, which gives a precise definition of legal terms, that kind of thing. You can actually choose to use a different edition of Black's Dictionary if you so wish, and there's all sorts of weird things. We've only got a minute or so left, folks. I try to keep these running to time from start to end. So just quickly, anyone got any final thoughts or comments or questions or anything before we finish for the day? Gaz, you kind of got a dump there of a whole load of stuff. There's, I guess Alina's come to get used to just listening and absorbing that type of thing, which is good. Well,
No, it's been a great session today.
But
it's all new this for me because I've never, the people I know, well, no one's really into crypto, so it's only me. So, and I've never done all this before on Zoom. This is the first time I've been on Zoom, so I've never used it before.
Cool, welcome.
Come back. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. As Eric says, welcome.
Well, nobody's into crypto, so I thought I'd jump in here and we always see what's happening.
Excellent. Well, we're here pretty much every week, so do come back. And also, if you've got any questions of the stuff that you're curious about,
I'll think of some.
You've heard of them. Yeah, definitely. Because Alina sometimes comes with I think she has a prepared list. We actually, I, and a former colleague of mine, we actually did a 1-hour podcast last week, specially just for beginners to ask some great questions. And again, Elena was asking some great stuff, and hopefully that'll be useful for people. Right, we'll close it off there. So I'll say
it was a great experience, to be honest.
That's good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to finish off there. Say thank you everyone for coming along. Eric, thank you for waking up in LA, and good to see you again. Have a great day, folks.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Now.
Bye.
Bye. Well, thanks for joining us, sticking around. I hope you enjoyed that. Do click the subscribe button so that you can come along and listen to more. Even better, come along and join a future session. Details of the sessions are in the link below. Do click on the like, make comments. But most of all, enjoy it. Have a great day.